Hey, Pat.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you as well. Welcome, everybody, back to Talking Pedagogy with Pat and Rafa, where we talk about all the things with Reggio and beyond, I would say.
Reggio and beyond. Yes.
Childhood. We were in preparation for this episode. Pat and I were talking about, right, like including the news. Because unfortunately, there's some pretty big news that's going to impact a lot of people in New York, and we wanted to talk about it. And for this episode, we're also going to talk about the beginning of the school year. And in a way, it's a follow up to our last episode where we talked about setting up the classroom. And so I've been with my teachers this past week, really focusing on routines and seeing the impact of a well developed, well organized classroom. So I'm excited to delve into that. Um,
That sounds good.
yeah, so looking forward to that. And then Pat, you what's on your mind if you want to say anything?
Yeah, talking about the news, and we know that you may be listening to this after the fact, maybe months after the fact, and we hope that the news would have changed. But in regards to Head Start, there was some really bad things that happened this week as far as the federal government pulling a grant from New York City to the tune of $70 million. That just happened this week. So, this week being the week of the 7th. And so, of September 7th. Yes, we just got past September 11th, and it happened on Friday the 12th. So, just some context in this political time that we're living in, it has been challenging for Head Start, because there has been talk about a lot of cuts, talk about DEI being erased within their curriculum and within their training materials, and they're having to scrub a lot of things. So that had already started, but then this grant was not renewed. It was a 5-year grant. And I can't speak with total authority, but there is a great New York Times article for any of you who are interested in doing your own research. The good news is they have a year where all children who are currently receiving the wonderful services of Head Start will not be negatively impacted. But past this year, we don't know. So I think that to me was kind of a little bit of an earthquake in early childhood. And I'm really hopeful that within that year, there will be a lot of rallying and a lot of things done to make sure that this doesn't, happen, that Head Start can continue to flourish, because it is a program that, to me, and later we're going to have, not in this episode, but another episode, we're going to have someone speaking about her experience with Head Start as an immigrant and how much it helped her. So we're pretty passionate, I think, both Rafa and I, about the Head Start framework and the program and organization and all the good that it does. And so anyway, we'll hope that things improve as this year continues. But just wanted to kind of give note to that.
Yeah, thank you. When we were talking about whether to even talk about the news, I was thinking that it's such an important point, and to really connect education with the wider community and society and politics, frankly.
Yeah.
It's inseparable in that way. So it's something I didn't know when you mentioned. It just happened yesterday as of the recording of this episode. And that's very upsetting to hear. And at the same time, I find hope, for example, in New Mexico, where you had mentioned, reminded me that now that they do have more universal childcare. And with the mayoral race in New York City and Zoran Mamdani, I'm really hopeful and curious there'll be an expansion of universal pre-K in New York City as well.
Yeah, me too. Fingers crossed that things will get better. That's what we're hoping. But there's a lot going on, I think, as far as conversations. And I think that the new deputy chancellor is really on it too, and seems to be really vocal about standing up for a lot of these programs. So, yeah, hopefully everything's going to continue to be discussed and the outcomes will be positive. But we should all be very aware. It is a very political time in education, and education frameworks are changing both in the higher ed institutions all the way down. there's a lot of shock waves happening to us all. And I think in some ways, Rafa, that was kind of an impetus that got us to really start this, is that we felt educators really needed a place to come and discuss what's happening and how it's impacting them, because it is political. Public school has always been, hasn't it?
Mhm.
And while we represent in our conversations both private and public, certainly we are big advocates for healthy public school systems. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
what's been happening with you though? Like this was the first few weeks, Rafa, as at your school. Tell us about it.
First
What's
week,
going on?
first week, proper week. Yeah.
First proper week.
Let's get into it at the beginning of the school year. Last time we talked about the importance of setting up the environment, some thoughts and tips on that. And I think I had mentioned how I was preparing my teachers in that moment to set up very warm environments, environments that were organized, that allowed for children's autonomy. And this week, the more context about the school. Several of our children come back. Our teachers often loop at this point with our kids, which is
Excellent.
a big deal. Really makes things smoother.
Yeah,
There's been a big focus on, yes, open play and observing and just establishing rhythms of communications with families that are sustainable for us, the educators, and also provides enough of a glimpse for the families as well. So I think we've hit the best balance we've ever had this year. We basically send a note through in this case, we use an application called Brightwheel. There's no sponsorship or anything,
yeah, okay.
but
Not yet, not yet.
but we use Brightwheel, and we send daily brief updates. And in terms of sustainability, been really working with the team on valuing small and uh, short and sweet and consistent and descriptive updates, rather than trying to save everything for the end of the week, for example, or for the end of the month. And so the team is really feeling the benefit of that already. And families have come up to me and said that they're really happy with communication this year, and
That's great.
it's more than they're used to. Several families new to mi casita this year have said that to me. So uh, doesn't mean I won't hear other opinions next week, but so far that's the feedback I'm getting. And just working with the team on the layering of that cake. I think we mentioned last time that in
Yeah.
terms of the very, very basics. So with our 2 year olds, the first time they made a line, we just talked about grabbing a certain colored circle. So we have circles on our line we use to go outside, and they're different colors. And we're a Spanish immersion school. So what circle time for one day was simply agarra el aro, grab the ring, agarra el aro verde, grab the green ring. And it became like a very simple game that the little ones are really into. And so
Nice.
another educator in the classroom model for me, and then we invited them. And at first they looked at me like I had out like with a deer in headlights. And then then after they maybe processed more, after a little more modeling with me and the other educators in the classroom, they started really getting into it. And
Mm.
we were able to grab the ring. And it was a very powerful example for me of the importance of breaking things down and taking our time and slowing down in that way. It took us a good 15 minutes between modeling, playing the game, and actually starting to make the line. Because the next step was remembering to hold on to the line, because they were used to the game until that point where they let go afterwards. So a lot of nuance about it.
I love that though, because basically what you're saying is you weren't looking for the end goal that you were gold, I'm saying, because it really is gold when little girls know how to hold on to that safely so they can go outside. You weren't thinking of that long-term goal. You were thinking of all the little pieces to get to it so that there could feel like a lot of success along the way, as opposed to, but we didn't even get to go outside with them holding on today, but instead being like, no, 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 this is going to take a long time, and making a game out of it so that the children have that sense of playfulness and yet have the time to really understand the importance of those instructions. I think that's brilliant.
Thank you. It was really wonderful. And I remember, so the context again is that the educator in that classroom is newer to 2 year olds. They've worked more with 3 and 4 year olds. And I offered, you know what, why don't I show you how you might teach this routine? And she was very
Oh,
happy to accept.
yeah,
And I remember thinking in the moment and planned, if you will, but I remember what are the 3 steps I really want them, or 2 or 3 steps I really want them to at least know to make so eventually we can get outside. And then I told myself, well, if they're grabbing and they get really into it, then let's see, we can stretch a bit and then we'll try to make a line now and hold on to it.
right.
And I wasn't expecting that necessarily. But then they did it with some guidance. And then I was like, okay, now let's walk through the school, just the school, and see if they can stay in the line. And we walked through the school, and yeah, they started leaving the line and coming back to the line, and that was so great because we were able to be playful in a safe environment of like,
Yeah,
oh, we stay in the line. This is what it looks like again, and then the
right.
next day they were able to go out, and the educators reported back that it was very successful.
That's wonderful. That did not take long at all, but that again
Didn't.
goes back to our strong image of the child, right? They
Mhm.
get it. They just need the time, right? And the right invitation, but they're totally open, ready to learn those types of things. And it's just us trusting them. And I have to say, that does require a lot of trust. I never took my twos outside because I had a shorter play group where parents were actually in a waiting room, or if they chose, they could visit with a psychologist, a child psychologist in the program that I was working in. But so I only had them for a short amount of time and we didn't get to go to, the routine of going outside. But I know I would have been nervous in Manhattan doing something like that. So I'm
Yeah,
thinking that's so important because going outside is so important. And this is another news thing that I just want to throw in, and I can't again speak with
bring it.
total expert authority, but my ophthalmologist told me that young children's eyes are currently not forming correctly because they're not getting enough sunlight.
Oh yeah,
And
I've
there, if you Google that, you'll find that this is true.
no,
And
yeah,
so I was like, oh my gosh, we have to get the kids more and more outside. And so one of the schools I'm working with in Massachusetts that's now becoming a Reggio Emilia inspired school, that is what they are doing. They're getting rid of their inside gym room. They're turning it into the art studio. The Atelierista will be working within this much bigger room. And they're gonna have their kids outside in all kinds of weather, and they're investing in having some outside equipment for storage and other things like that. So it's just interesting that hopefully we're going to be called back to remember how important the playground and the third environment of nature as the third teacher, how important that environment is to learning.
oh, I love what you were saying, how they repurposed an existing room into the atelier and how they're aiming to go outside regardless of weather. It reminds me this week, so it was very lightly raining. It was very lightly raining, and but it was stopping and going, and we talked about, okay, well, if the kids are dressed up enough, we can try, we can go out. And if the children are not that uncomfortable, like visibly uncomfortable, like let's try it. And so all classrooms ended up going outside. We noticed that we needed to remind families that, make sure your child is properly dressed for the weather. Because sometimes, understandably, families bring them, let's say, covered in a stroller, so they don't think they need like a raincoat, right?
Yes. Yes, of
So
course.
just a reminder. But like you were saying, there's so much benefit to being outside and feeling the rain on your skin, for example. And it was really light and it ended up working out. So I'm so glad that the team were able to do that.
And you know what you just brought up to mind? We always had painting smocks for children that were easily wipeable, and those are perfect to put over clothes.
Oh,
If a child doesn't have the proper rain gear,
absolutely.
those smocks are great, and they're fairly inexpensive. They're just plastic overlays, basically.
We have some of those. I'll see
Yeah.
next time. Thank you.
That's the way, is always thinking about, right, creatively how to use and reuse materials in different ways. But those would be really good to just throw over a kid so that their clothes don't get wet.
And then with your note about the eyes and needing glasses, there is an excellent video I found on YouTube by Vox, I believe.
Okay.
And it explains in this case, they're talking about why in South Korea, when there was rapid industrialization, I think in the 60s or around then, or 50s, all of a sudden the need for eyeglasses shot up. And then it talked about the importance of the sun to eye development. So that always stayed with me. And I was always, I was already convinced it was important to play outside, but even
Right, right.
it's like, no, we need to be outside.
I didn't know anything about it, but when he told me that, when I was asking him, had he seen a change in young children's eyes because of all the technology and time that they're spending, it is in fact both of those things that are now conspiring against young children. And so, yeah, we should do a whole segment on technology. I have very strong feelings about
Yeah, we
technology and young
should. That's
children.
a whole topic and sub.
Yes, yes. But I think I love that you wanted to talk about the beginning of the year and draw us back into all of the considerations. And I know we had a student of ours, Rafa, that just reached out, and I thought it was really interesting because she's just become her school's artillerista. So
Woo!
congrats to her. But she was asking about the beginning of the year and documentation and the layering in of expectations with artistic materials for young children, and how do you approach that? And I think that that is really important, that way you started by saying how you break the steps down. The same, and we spoke about it a little bit last time we spoke, I think, about like not putting all of the art materials out, but that's a gradual release as they become very familiar. Then you have a lot of materials that the children can decide when they want to take out and are able to take out with autonomy. So I thought that was interesting that, she was asking about also how do you document that? And it really brought up the fact that in the first 6 to 8 weeks or more, it is simply about that, right? About building the relationships to materials, to one another, and creating community. And so I just not being in a hurry again. There's no rush to put all this work up. There shouldn't be anyway. It's more about the work is what's going on inside in the building of relationships, right, to both materials and each other. And how do you document that? And that can be a very simple process. It doesn't have to get overcomplicated. Just what's happening, what's coming out in the group meetings. What are some of the ways that you're getting children to understand that your group meeting time is for asking questions? Are you bringing artifacts from something you saw, like maybe you saw two children playing together and you took a picture of that and you bring that back to circle time and you're like, or group meeting time, and you say like, what was happening here? Look at this picture. Oh, I wonder, I was listening. And whatever age child you're addressing, of course, through that lens, but really thinking about that, like building that connective tissue and how it's happening and documenting that. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the idea of documenting being lightweight, I think, is very important here. At Mi Casita, we're experimenting this year with using Google Keep, which is a
Oh,
Google
I don't know
app.
about it.
I didn't know about it either. And again, nothing sponsored. Like, I'm not saying use Google Keep, but if you're looking for ideas, Google Keep is essentially like electronic post-its,
Okay.
but very lightweight. The reason that I started thinking about using it was because we pay for Google Workspace as an organization, and it just lets we have Google Keep as a result. So I was like,
Excellent.
okay, let's just try it. And so I've been talking with the team at Mi Casita about just taking very brief reflections every day,
Yeah.
answering the questions of what happened, what might this mean, and then what are you going to do next, right? That's the
Yes.
broadest sense of it. But more specifically, this week we really focused on like whatever caught their attention, and also what happened with the routines today. What might that mean about what routine do we want to work on or add visuals to or practice again? And so, what are we going to do tomorrow? Right? Very bite sized. And then using those questions to then write a very brief note to families that's more parent facing and more parent friendly language, if you will, that allows the documentation to be of two uses for yourself to then that we revisit in our weekly meetings on Fridays, and
Right.
also to make it much easier to send that daily brief update to families as well.
I love that. I'm gonna tell you about an old-fashioned way that I've been working with these 2 schools. I love the what did you call it now? Google
Keep,
Keep.
yeah, keep.
We decided that in the 2 schools that I'm working with that are just becoming Reggio, that it would be important to have a community board, a literal board, where there is a question of the week, and the expectation is that everybody has some input on the board about answering that question of the week. Also, that there could be other categories that remain, like materials needed for upcoming projects, successes, sharing a success, and just a question to the community. I have a question. So, answering a question, asking questions, but there being a central place and then somebody in the community, and in one of the schools it will be the art teacher or the atelierista is going to be monitoring it. But just so that there is that ongoing connection within in the community, but kind of more in real time throughout the day, and also not on devices, but instead just so everybody can walk past and see it. Because I do think most everybody are really spending a lot of time on devices, but for some people, we work with people who some people don't have that same amount of technology available to them. So being mindful that there's still some value and worth of just having that documentation board for you as your journey is happening as a community. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that idea of the central board with a question. I think it helps cultivate a culture of question asking in general. I think that's brilliant. And then with the idea of like the use of technology, and that is it is very, I have learned to be very clear with the expectations around it. So the first couple of days I actually told the whole team to put away their phones. I would take the photos.
Yeah, love it.
Being with everybody. And then we started talking about, okay, if you document in the moment, that's fine. But then you put your phone away because later in the day is when you're really supposed to, when the children are sleeping or during a designated, they also have designated planning time, reflection time after that as well, to then look at it more and then respond more, right? I think technology needs to have a lot of guardrails around it and a lot of norming,
Yeah.
because the point of technology that it works well when it's not keeping us from the present, I think, but it's helping us remember.
It's funny that you're saying that because this came up at one of the schools that I'm working with where they have their iPad for the classroom, and that iPad is all that can be used during the day.
Uh,
And I thought that was kind of a good way to put a guardrail up. It's like you can use your iPad to take videos and to take pictures, but it's not really able to be used for any other communication.
yeah, I think that's really smart.
It's a cost because you have to buy those iPads for your classrooms, right?
Yeah.
But overall, I think that just makes so much more sense. Yeah. Yeah, technology. I mean, we need to embrace it. And I want to say that I've been using AI even more to take pictures of classrooms and then let AI show what it would look like to be Reggio inspired and the environments that they come up with. I think I mentioned this. Did I mention this in the
Oh,
last podcast? I think I
you did show
mentioned
it
it.
today, actually.
Yeah, but I'm getting even more into it. And it's so fascinating to me as a visual person, like just how powerful that can be for people who are really struggling with. I don't even know what Reggio inspired means. When you keep talking about the environment as a third teacher, when you keep talking about soft colors and these natural textures and materials and lighting, I don't get it. And one of the pictures that I hope we can share at some point shows so clearly because one of the schools has already transformed their admin spaces, and it's amazing the difference between what it looked like initially and now what it looks like and how they feel so differently when they come into their space. It's fascinating. So, yeah, I love AI for that. I'm not a whiz at it, but it's fun to see all the things it can do.
Yeah, AI for me has been most helpful in one of my thought partners, like not replacing other people,
Yeah.
just an additional thought
Well,
partner.
you
Or
better not. You better not replace. You're my
no,
thinking partner.
yeah, we're thinking partners, and it's also been the most helpful as a way to tell. For example, I want all of the peer-reviewed research that's out there publicly available around potty training, like,
Smart.
or something like.
Smart.
There's so much. There's so many things out there in general that are kind of pseudosciency or like work for some people but not for others. And so I have
Yeah.
found it very helpful to help me think through, based on research that's out there, uh, possibilities.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think technology is really great when it's used to create more, not when it's used to passively consume. Like using AI to lesson plan and just leave it at that and do what it tells you, I think is the complete incorrect way to use it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. And I think especially with Reggio, you really can't. I don't see how anybody could use AI for lesson planning.
I mean, I could.
But I mean, maybe it'd be interesting for us to try, right? Like to say we have a thread of interest and then put that possible thread of interest in and see what they come back with. This is what you should do next. But
Well, I think it could be helpful as a brainstorm partner, especially if you're not in a school where everyone is doing Reggio inspired work. Like
that's
if
true.
you're alone, I think that could be really useful. I still think it's better to use it in conjunction with finding a community. Like reach out to us.
Yes.
but, but again, it can really help get through some, in my experience, some bottlenecks when you're thinking alone about something.
Yeah. Well, I want to try doing that though. I want to try putting in, I have an idea for a project that the children seem to be interested in and just see what AI would say, like in the ball toss way. Like, if they would ball toss back, well, you need to further investigate. You need to ask more questions. Are you wondering about this? Or are you just, you know what I mean? Like if it really will
If,
understand well
yeah,
enough
depends how
the
you prompt
process.
it. So I think you would need to tell it like act like a pedagogical colleague in a Reg inspired context while we
Ooh,
discuss
okay. I'm going to try it.
you. I'm sounding like I really know what I'm talking about. I don't. I just play around with it a lot, and I've read things here and there. And,
Yeah, it's coming. It is going to be very, very important to understand and to know how best to use it, right? And not be used by it. So,
well, I am a little distraught by the environmental impact of it. Still, that's very much on my mind, and I'm at a yeah. It's one of those things where it's happening, and yet the world is literally burning up. So, what are we going to do? I don't know. That's a much bigger question, but that's on my mind as well.
yeah. I know today for me, I just did something that made me feel good. Got all of my electronics and they're being recycled properly at a place, and I'm taking them to a place to do that. But yeah, that's a side note. But I think, yeah, I mean, our footprints are, what footprint are each of us leaving every day on the ecology, on our global consciousness, and on those that we meet and that just
Mhm.
come into our path? How are we showing up? And I think that's something that we all, more today than ever, need to be thinking about those moments and how you're showing up in those moments because it is a very contentious and divided time. So, yeah. I mean, let's be real. A lot has happened in the news that we won't even get into this week
Mhm.
that was just mind blowing. So,
Yeah. Woo.
woo,
Well, we're getting to
woo
the 30
wee.
mark, and I think you know what? Let's maybe talk about we've talked about a bunch of topics, but it's all been related to
Kind of.
it all stemmed from the news and the beginning of the school year and what emerged from that, which is very it's a very embracing the emergence of it all is a very Reg inspired practice in
I
my.
would agree. I
And
would
so
agree.
I'm thinking of some any thoughts we may have about future topics or little ahas or just reminders that came up for us today.
I was thinking that it might be interesting to kind of work our way through the tenets, you
Mhm.
know, let the tenets kind of be a base for our conversations and really explore deeply each one that we have been kind of holding in our work that are most important to us that we would like to share more about our thinking around. But I also would really invite anybody who's listening to send in questions and ideas that you have that you would like to talk about. We are going to have a guest very soon, Marion, to speak about her Head Start experience, and we will continue to invite guests on. So, this is a ball toss. We want to hear from you. So please do get back to us and let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, and we hope you enjoyed the conversation. Hope you feel like you're at the table with us. And yes, as Pat said, the please submit your questions, thoughts through the Google form that should be linked in the show notes every time. And
Yeah.
we can't wait to be continue to be in conversation with you all.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. And Rafa, thanks for just all of your wonderful ideas that you're so capable of sharing in such an eloquent way always.
Oh,
Such a
you're
pleasure.
a lot of credit, but thanks. Yeah, it's always awesome to chat with you, Pat. So
All
until next,
right. Until the next time.
yeah.
All right.
Hasta luego. Ciao.
Adios. Bye.